Good morning. It is very early for me. We had Pete Hegseth and the Department of War had some updates. So I figured I would just go live now instead of waiting until later this afternoon. And we do have some warnings coming in for missiles that were launched in Israel. Good morning, good morning. Welcome to the live stream. I'll be covering updates on the war with Iran that has spread to other countries, and we'll also be doing some live monitoring. Pete Hegseth and the Department of War have also spoken about casualties and everything else that's been going on. Looks like we might have some codes coming in from the military radio. We'll see if anything happens with that. If you want to support in other ways on the channel, there are links in the description. And I was telling people before, I'll be moving this live monitoring over to Off Script Radio, which is my other YouTube channel. And I'll put that in the chat as well. But it will have 24/7 monitoring. So it'll have the live cams, it'll have the EAMs, and the military radio will be on there as well. And then it'll have all the intel, which is like flight radar, Pentagon pizza, radiation, all that stuff will be on there as well. It'll all be automated and basically be 24/7. So if you're interested in any of that, make sure you go subscribe over at Off Script Radio. I put that in the chat. Good morning, Taniel, Moon Goddess, Death Queef. It's a hilarious name. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started with the video here. And this is Department of War, Pete Hegseth, and then another gentleman also comes up as well. And they're basically giving us all the updates on the war. I assume it's going to be positive and uplifting. We'll see what they say. Gotta find the start. Where'd they actually start? Here we go.
Good morning. I'll start, as we often do here at the Department of War, with the bottom line up front. For the world to hear, and the press to actually admit, that the United States is decimating the radical Iranian regime's military in a way the world has never seen before. Never before has a modern, capable military, which Iran used to have, been so quickly destroyed and made combat ineffective. Devastated. We said it would not be a fair fight, and it has not been. As I stated during our first press conference on day 2, that was 10 short days ago, the combination of the world's two most powerful air forces is unprecedented and unbeatable. Between our air force and that of the Israelis, over 15,000 enemy targets have been struck. That's well over 1,000 a day. No other combination of countries in the world can do that. So today, as we speak, we fly over the top of Iran and Tehran. Fighters and bombers all day picking targets as they choose. As our intelligence gets better and better and more refined. Looking up, the IRGC and Iranian regime sees only two things on the side of aircraft: the Stars and Stripes and the Star of David. The evil regime's worst nightmare. Iran has no air defenses. Iran has no air force. Iran has no navy. Their missiles, their missile launchers, and drones being destroyed or shot out of the sky. Their missile volume is down 90%. Their one-way attack drones yesterday, down 95%. And as the world is seeing, they are exercising sheer desperation in the Straits of Hormuz. Something we're dealing with, we have been dealing with it, and don't need to worry about it. We're on plan to defeat, destroy, disable all of their meaningful military capabilities at a pace the world has never seen before. But it's not just that Iran doesn't have a functioning air force, or that their entire navy is at the bottom of the Persian Gulf, or their missile force is shrinking daily. Even more importantly, they also don't have the ability to build more. That's the most important component I'd like to emphasize today. Soon and very soon, all of Iran's defense companies will be destroyed. For example, as of 2 days ago, Iran's entire ballistic missile production capacity, every company that builds every component of those missiles, has been functionally defeated, destroyed. Buildings, complexes, and factory lines all across Iran destroyed. So we're shooting down and destroying what missiles they still have in stock, but more importantly, ensuring that they have no ability to make more. Their production lines, their military plants, their defense innovation centers, defeated. Iran's leadership is in no better shape. Desperate and hiding, they've gone underground, cowering. That's what rats do. We know the new so-called not-so-supreme leader is wounded and likely disfigured. He put out a statement yesterday, a weak one, actually, but there was no voice and there was no video. It was a written statement. He called for unity. Apparently killing tens of thousands of protesters is his kind of unity. Iran has plenty of cameras and plenty of voice recorders. Why a written statement? I think you know why. His father, dead. He's scared, he's injured, he's on the run, and he lacks legitimacy. It's a mess for them. Who's in charge? Iran may not even know. With every passing hour, we know, and we know they know, that the military capabilities of their evil regime are crumbling. They can barely communicate, let alone coordinate. They're confused, and we know it. Our response? We will keep pressing, we will keep pushing, keep advancing, no quarter, no mercy for our enemies. Yet some in this crew, in the press, just can't stop. Allow me to make a few suggestions. People look up at the TV and they see banners, they see headlines. I used to be in that business, and I know that everything is written intentionally. For example, a banner or a headline, Mideast war intensifies, splashing on the screen the last couple of days, alongside visuals of civilian or energy targets that Iran has hit, because that's what they do. What should the banner read instead? How about Iran increasingly desperate? Because they are. They know it, and so do you, if it can be admitted. Or more fake news from CNN. Reports that the Trump administration underestimated the Iran war's impact on the Strait of Hormuz. Patently ridiculous, of course. For decades, Iran has threatened shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. This is always what they do, hold the strait hostage. CNN doesn't think we thought of that. It's a fundamentally unserious report. The sooner David Ellison takes over that network, the better. Another example of a fake headline that I saw yesterday. War widening. Here's a real headline for you for an actual patriotic press. How about Iran shrinking, going underground? You see, Iran's leaders are hiding in bunkers and moving into civilian areas. The only thing that is widening is our advantage. Not to mention our Gulf partners stepping up even more, now going on the offense, and have always been with us on the defense with collective and integrated air defenses. Our will, it is unshakable. Our options, maximized, and our capabilities still building. We're going up, they're going down. As I said from the start, President Trump holds the cards. He'll determine the pace, the tempo, and the timing of this conflict. His hand firmly on the wheel, as well as on the throttle setting. America first, peace through strength, in action. From day one, as our nation expects and the president demands, our warriors have fought with lethality, precision, and rapid innovation. In fact, today will be, yet again, the highest volume of strikes that America has put over the skies of Iran and Tehran. The number of sorties and number of bomber pulses, the highest yet, ramping up and only up. And quantity has a quality of its own as we continue to ramp up. Every tool of AI, of cyber, of space, EW, counter UAS, you name it, we're employing it. Blinding, confusing, and deceiving our enemy. Because we know who the good guys are here. And the American people do too. And that makes my job simple. I serve God, the troops, the country, the Constitution, and the President of the United States, and answer only to those. All in service of victory on the battlefield and the military objectives that we've laid out from day one. Defeat the missiles, missile launchers, and defense industrial base, which I laid out today. Defeat the Navy and deny Iran the ability to have a nuclear weapon. Clear, decisive, achievable. And Admiral Cooper knows, the CENTCOM commander who we spent a couple of hours with last night, that in pursuit of those objectives, we have his back in every way. His commanders know that, and so do the troops in harm's way. Admiral Cooper gets what he needs, the assets, the authorities, the munitions, you name it. We will stop at nothing to win. War is hell. War is chaos. And as we saw yesterday with the tragic crash of our KC-135 tanker, bad things can happen. American heroes, all of them. And as I have with all of them, as we have, we will greet those heroes at Dover, and their sacrifice will only recommit us to the resolve of this mission. But war in this context and in pursuit of peace is necessary, which is why each day on bended knee we continue to appeal to heaven, to Almighty God's providence, to watch over and give special skill and confidence to our leaders and to our warriors. To those warriors who this nation prays for every single day, I hear from all of you out there who pray for them every day. Stay on bended knee and pray for them. I continue to say to them, Godspeed. May the Lord bless you and keep keep going. Mr. Chairman, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us today. Before I start with an update, I also want to address the tragic loss of our KC-135 refueling aircraft yesterday. The incident occurred over friendly territory in western Iraq while the crew was on a combat mission, and again was not the result, as CENTCOM has said, was not the result of hostile or friendly fire. We're still treating this as an active rescue and recovery operation. As CENTCOM announced this morning, 4 airmen have been recovered, and the Air Force and U.S. Central Command will provide updates as information becomes available. Please keep these brave airmen, their families, friends, and units in your thoughts in the coming hours and days. Our service members make an incredible sacrifice to go forward and do the things that the nation asks of them. It's a reminder of the true cost of the dedication and commitment of the Joint Force. We're also aware of a fire on board the USS Gerald R. Ford. We're thinking about the crew there who were injured in the fire. We believe and hope that everyone will be okay, and we're grateful for that. And for any further questions on that, we'd refer you to NAVCENT or to the Navy. This morning, we enter the 13th day of Operation Epic Fury, and we continue to make progress towards our military objectives. As the Secretary said, today will be our heaviest day of kinetic fires across the operating area. CENTCOM continues to attack ballistic missile and drone capabilities so that they are no longer a threat to U.S. forces, our bases, or our partners. They're continuing to destroy the Iranian Navy to ensure freedom of navigation, and this means going after Iran's mine-laying capability and destroying their ability to attack commercial vessels. And we're targeting their defense industrial base so they cannot rebuild the capabilities that can harm America's interests or our partners in the future. As Admiral Cooper said in his update on Wednesday, Iranian combat power continues to decline as a result of the continued strikes, as the Secretary talked about. We've attacked over 6,000 targets, and our strike packages continue to launch every hour, and we've maintained an unprecedented number of sorties up overhead of Iran. CENTCOM is now persistently over the enemy, and a result, we've seen a reduction in missile and one-way attack fires, as the Secretary said. In less than 2 weeks, we've rendered the Iranian Navy combat ineffective and continue to attack naval vessels, including all of their Soleimani-class warships, which were armed with anti-ship missiles and anti-aircraft weapons. We've made progress, but Iran still has the capability to harm friendly forces and commercial shipping. And our work on this effort continues. But I want to make something clear. The only thing preventing commercial traffic and flow through the Straits right now, which there is some through the Straits, is Iran. They are the belligerents here holding the Straits closed, although there is some traffic moving through there. We've made it a priority to target Iran's mine-laying enterprise, their mine layers, the naval bases and depots, in addition to the missiles that could influence the Straits. And CENTCOM continues to attack those efforts. And we continue to make progress on the industrial base to include factories, weapons, warehouses that are stored in, and we will continue to do so in the coming days, especially today. Now, as I often do, I want to share a little bit about our incredible joint force. Today, I'm going to talk about our incredible artillery force comprised of American soldiers and Marines who've been sinking ships, destroying depots, and launching Army Tactical Missile Systems, or ATACMS, precision strike missiles, or PrSMs, and high mobility rocket systems, or HIMARS. From outside Iran, our Army and Marine artillerymen are hitting sites that Iran relies on to project power beyond their borders and protect our deployed. In just the first 13 days of this operation, our artillery forces have made history. They fired the first precision strike missiles ever used in combat, reaching deep into enemy territory. They've used Army ATACMS to sink multiple ships, including a submarine, and they've done all of this with the precision and determination that comes from relentless training and trust in each other and in their weapon systems. Yesterday, I had the incredible honor and privilege of speaking with some of our young soldiers from the 3rd Battalion, 27th Field Artillery Regiment out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina, the unit and the crew that fired the first precision strike missiles. The soldiers I met came from all over this great country: New York, Texas, Delaware, California. One had been in the Army only 6 months and been in the unit for 2 months and was already deployed. He was the youngest at 20, but you would not know it from the way that they talked about their mission. The others were 22 and 28 years old. They spoke with the sense of calm pride, purpose, and clarity that tells you clearly they understand the weight of what they're doing and the people who depend on them. I asked them to walk me through a fire mission. I asked not just what they do, but what they feel, especially those first crew members on this particular mission. These soldiers basically live in these vehicles behind us. The cab, very tight, 2 folks sit next to each other with the crew commander behind them. It's jammed inside there with their personal weapons and kit, and they sit and wait for a fire mission. And when that fire mission comes, they close the armored doors and begin to program the systems. They then throw 3 simple toggle switches, and 10 to 15 feet behind them, a rocket motor ignites, and the round is headed downrange to do the nation's work. I asked these youngsters, these young, awesome Americans, what does that feel like? And one of them just looked at me and said, "It's awesome." No drama, no hesitation, in the middle of the day, in the middle of the night, in the sun, the rain, and the snow, flawless execution. Their Marine counterparts are out there doing the same thing every night. Same work, same pressure, same expectations, same results. And we hand tremendous and enormous responsibility to these young Americans. And they carry it with a level of maturity, grit, professionalism, and tenacity that makes me incredibly proud to be a part of their joint force. Their parents and families would and should be incredibly proud. and their leaders and I trust them to do the deeds that they must do in difficult circumstances every single time. I also want to touch today I want to touch for a moment today on their leadership. These young Americans are led by extraordinary young leaders out at the tactical edge. Yesterday, the battery commander and her NCO were there with this crew on the same video screen. The two of them hardly said a word. They didn't have to. In their eyes, and in particular the commander's eyes, you could see the quiet trust and confidence she had in these soldiers and the rest of their battery. It came through loud and clear, and we appreciate their leadership. When I asked these soldiers yesterday, what is it that you need from the Secretary and I, they looked at each other, paused for a moment, and looked back at me and said, "More rounds, sir." It was awesome. So thank you to those soldiers and Marines out on the firing line supporting our mission, and thank you to their families. Our joint force will continue today to deliver dynamic fires against the enemy from the land, sea, and air. We remain deeply grateful for their service, and for the third time today, I'll mention that today will be our busiest day. This mission remains complex, dangerous, and difficult, and every service member has a family waiting for them to return home. And I want to thank all of the families today who are supporting their deployed forces and those doing the work here in the States. On a personal note today, I also want to thank the joint staff and the team that I have the pleasure of working with. Some of them right here in this room. They are working 24 hours a day to deliver the options that we must to the Secretary and to the President. Today, as I close, I ask that we remember our fallen and those participating in the recovery operations to bring home our lost KC-135 crew, that we keep those service members and their families in their thoughts and prayers. Those are very, very, very tough days when that knock comes on the door for people on both sides of the door. Again, thank you to our deployed, thank you to our fallen and to their families and to the Joint Force. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Alexandra Ingersoll, One America News. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Strait of Hormuz and when it might be fully operational again? And how do we ensure our objective of denying Iran a nuclear weapon if they continue to align with our adversaries?
So I'll take it and chime in, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like it all. I want to emphasize what the chairman said about that. The only thing prohibiting transit in the Straits right now is Iran shooting at shipping. It is open for transit should Iran not do that. Now, there's a reason why we chose, as one of our primary objectives, destroy the Navy. We understood the ability to interdict shipping is something Iran has done for 40 years. It's key terrain. They've used it as leverage. The world is seeing what they'll do to fight back in that context. And so we've heard them talk about taking various measures, and we're planning for all of them. So we have a plan for every option here. We're working with our interagency partners, and that's not a strait we're going to allow to remain contested or with a lack of flow of commercial goods. So we're aware of that. We're laser focused on our military objectives, but also want to make sure our partners across this government understand we're working with you to make sure that energy flows. And that's an important part. And the second question was on the nuclear capability. As we've said from the beginning, their strategy shifted just from defense of their nuclear facilities to a conventional umbrella of so many missiles that no one would challenge their ability to the opportunity to defeat their nuclear capabilities. And it was growing by the day. So with Iran at its weakest moment, going at that ballistic missile capability creates an opportunity to ensure at any point in time that Iran give up their nuclear capabilities, or if need be, you prevent them from doing it, as the president has done once already with Operation Midnight Hammer, obliterating those capabilities. So the conventional side is a huge part at getting at denying nuclear capabilities, if you have anything you want to add.
Appreciate the question. I'm not going to comment on what we may or may not be thinking about any options that the Joint Force could be tasked to do in the future, whether it's on the nuke matter or anything else. Thank you.
But we have options.
The mines that are in the Strait of Hormuz and our ability to, obliterate them?
We retain a range of options to solve a whole variety of problems, and that is one set of options that we have, that we hold on to. So,
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Hegseth. Mary Margaret with Daily Wire. Thank you both for the update. ABC News has updated its story from yesterday, clarifying that the FBI report on Iran possibly striking California was unverified. I just want to ask you, what impact did that original reporting have on the public, and does Iran even have the ability to conduct such a strike? And then just really quickly on another note, what role did Vice President Vance play in counseling the president on this conflict? Can you speak to some of the media reporting suggesting that there is a division there?
That reporting on California obviously had no impact on us. Also, we're used to bad reporting. We're used to ill-informed reporting. And so it doesn't change how we operate, but we engage with it to prove that it's not true, as CENTCOM has done so well. Ultimately, I look at the reports on a daily basis of our interagencies all over it. My partners across government are all over, looking for indications and warnings, keeping the American people safe. There's a lot of things Iran has said it can do for a long time, thankfully, including engaging their proxies and getting them involved in the fight, which they haven't been able to do. So we're watching that very closely. And as far as the vice president, he's an incredible member, leader of this team as well, alongside the president and the Secretary of State. I can't say enough great stuff about this team, how it works together, how it provides options to the president, and the vice president every single day is a key voice in that, an indispensable voice in that, actually. In the middle there, red tie, yes.
Michael Gordon, Wall Street Journal. Iran is thought to have 440 kilograms of highly enriched uranium in at least 2 locations and several thousand kilograms of lower purity material. Can you conclude this mission successfully without physically taking control of that material, or are you counting on diplomatic negotiations to provide some measure of control leading to its removal? You've mentioned missiles, you've mentioned drones, military industry. You haven't stipulated that taking care of that material is a mission priority.
We've said from the beginning, deny Iran nuclear weapons as a core mission. We retain options across the spectrum to ensure that they never do. And President Trump has said that. And that's why this mission actually couldn't have been possible without Midnight Hammer, without what those B-2s did going across and obliterating those facilities. That set the condition for the opportunity to do what we're doing now. So the president's kept his eye focused on nuclear capabilities. And I will say we have a range of options, up to and including Iran deciding that they will give those up, which of course we would welcome. They weren't willing to do in negotiations. I would never tell this group or the world what we're willing to do or how far we're willing to go, but we have options for sure. Right next to him.
Me?
No, right there.
Right here, sir?
Right here? I'll
zip.
take it for
Quarter
sure.
zip right there. Yep. No, you. Yep.
Okay, thank you, sir. Can you please provide some guidance? It's been 13 days in. Can you please provide some guidance, both of you, about the strike on the girls' school? There's been reporting that indicates that preliminary inquiry, even though it's ongoing, has determined that the airstrike was carried out by the United States. Given that there is another competing narrative that this was done intentionally, can you provide us with some guidance about whether this was the case? Secondly, we are also getting, we had heard yesterday from Energy Secretary Wright that said that the U.S. Navy would not be ready until the end of the month to provide escorts through the Strait of Hormuz. Is that an accurate assessment? And if so, can you tell us why? Thank you.
Well, with an issue on your first topic, an issue of such seriousness, we're not going to let reporting lead us or force our hand into indicating what happened in a particular situation, because the truth matters. So I can report that CENTCOM has designated an investigating officer to complete a command investigation. The command investigation will take as long as necessary to address all the matters surrounding this incident. And the investigating officer is from outside CENTCOM and is a general officer. But I will note to this group and to the world, there's only one entity in this conflict between us and Iran that never targets civilians. Literally never targets civilians. I look at the process that's used on dynamic strikes or on boat strikes and others. We have a very high fidelity process in that case. So we don't target, Iran does. We will investigate, we'll get to the truth, and we'll share it when we have it. Absolutely. And what was the second
About the
question?
Strait of Hormuz, about the Navy, Secretary Wright.
It's a tactically complex environment, and before I think we want to take anything through there at scale, we want to make sure that we do the work pursuant to our current military objectives to do that safely and smartly. So we're continuing to develop.
And we do
options.
a lot of work.
Yeah.
And like I said, it is dynamic, but this is, I think, almost by 20% the largest day of strikes. And as I said, our intelligence just gets better and better. That feedback loop feeds itself. And as we refine those targets, it exponentially increases what we can hit and why, to include strategic things the world's talking about and looking at. And it's our job to have a plan for it, which we do, to address it, and ensure that the president has options. We've done that from the beginning in this department. He'll have options on that topic as well. Right here.
United States
thank
did
you.
let that strike, sir?
An investigation is an investigation. That's what it is. It doesn't mean anything other than that. Yes.
Ryan Morgan with the Epic Times. Regarding today's busy day of strikes, last week you guys discussed the progress of the air campaign to gain air superiority and to transition from these standoff weapons launched at range to more overhead strikes. Can you now say that these strikes today are going to rely entirely on stand-in over-the-top weapons, or are standoff range weapons still in play?
It's a great question. I can say, based on the report I read this morning at 0600, only 1% of the munitions we're using today are standoff munitions. The rest are over-the-top, the types of which we have a plethora, which was our goal from the beginning. You use standoff, which are more exquisite. You transition to a much larger magazine depth, ensuring that you're preserving all the capabilities you have and your options across the force. Absolutely.
Has Iran placed any mines
Right
since
here,
the war
Lisa.
started? Is Iran placing new mines?
We've heard them talk about it, just like you've reported recklessly and wildly about it. But we have no clear evidence. We have no clear evidence of that.
Thank you,
Right
sir.
here.
Mr. Secretary, given everything the U.S. have accomplished in the last 24 hours, as of today, how do you define success in this military option? And has that definition changed from day one? And also regarding Iran government telling countries hosting U.S. American bases that they could face attacks, what is the Pentagon doing about that?
First question is, what is the objective?
How do you define success as of today?
Yeah, I mean, we define success, again, 13 days in, by reaching the military objectives that we've laid out. Launchers, missile launchers, defense industrial base, their Navy, the ability to project power in the naval sense, leading toward denying them to get a nuclear weapon. And we've got internal metrics that look at that we represent to the president, who then can decide how long he'd like to continue in pursuit of those military objectives. So that hasn't changed. There's a lot of things a lot of people talk about, what they want us to do, or what we should do, or what we should stay focused on. And again, I've addressed this before, and I think it's worth saying again, mission creep, or expansive missions, or prolonged timelines, or democracy building, or nation building, you name it, has not been part of what President Trump wants us to be involved in. We're solving for something here, this particular mission set, but also recognizing this country's conditioned to previous leaders, whether it's George W. Bush or Barack Obama or Joe Biden, who had these expansive, nebulous mission sets that kept changing all the time. So the timeline kept moving, and we kept pouring more troops in and on the ground. And then pretty soon everyone wonders, like I did in Afghanistan in 2012, what's our mission here? I'm not clear what it is. We're taking the opposite approach here and saying we've defined these objectives, we're pursuing those objectives. The president has his hand on the throttle and will decide ultimately when they've been reached that serve the purposes of the United States of America, American interests first.
And regarding the threats to countries hosting
Yeah, right here.
Thank you, Secretary Hegseth. Polls show over 80% of Republicans support the president's military action in Iran, but there's some consternation in parts of the party, particularly from your fellow Fox News alum, Tucker Carlson. He called the war disgusting and evil, and then said of unconditional surrender, which the president has called for, means foreign troops get to rape your wives and daughters. Have you heard these comments, and what's your reaction to them?
We're busy executing on behalf of great patriotic Americans with a clear mission that's 47 years overdue, and we're going to execute on that regardless of what people say about it. Yeah, right here.
Mr. Secretary, you have said that the U.S. military has essentially aerial superiority, naval superiority over Iran, yet we're not escorting ships through the Strait of Hormuz. Why? How did you not plan for this?
We plan for it. We recognize it. Because ultimately we want to do it sequentially in a way that makes the most sense for what we want to achieve and ensure that we're sending the right signals to the world when we do so. So when Chris Wright speaks or we speak, it's based on a full assessment of what we're up against, what we want to say to the world, how that we want them to see and understand the conflict. It's like this whole idea of the war widening. That's what the press wants to make it look like it's widening and chaos is ensuing. No, we're actually closing in on grabbing hold of and controlling what objectives we want to achieve and how we want to achieve them. It's called shaping operations and setting the conditions. But when you shape the environment, you don't always tell. I mean, foolish political leaders and foolish military leaders of the past will hang an exact deadline on it. Or here's exactly when we'll do what we're going to do. Or here's how long it's going to take us. And then if you meet that, maybe you meet it. But if you don't, you fail. And if you're far beyond, we know exactly what we're shaping and why. We're sending those signals working across the interagency. The Strait of Hormuz is something we've paid attention to from the beginning. And the American people can rest assured we will ensure that our interests are advanced, no doubt. Yeah, right there, green jacket.
Mike Bress with the Washington Examiner. How many American casualties have there been, and where were the American service members when they were injured?
I mean, it's a bunch of return to duty. So we've had the large majority have gone in for some medical treatment and return to duty. We've had in Kuwait, Jordan, down across the southern flank a little bit, a variety of places, most from one-way attack strikes.
But I want to clarify that. I think what we've tried to do here is
is
clarify those numbers rather than saying KIA or WIA wounded. Be more clear about that because the overwhelming majority, almost 90%, thank God, are returned to duty. Minor injuries returned to duty, and so that number can look a certain way, and our job is to add some fidelity to it. Absolutely, right here. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. David Zia, Real America's Voice. Can you share what types of munitions have been used on the attacks on commercial shipping? Have any hit mines? And are USVs, unmanned surface vehicles, being used? And just a quick follow-up, were there any arrests in Fort Campbell with the drone thefts?
I'm not familiar with the Fort Campbell thing. The strikes that Iran has taken on shipping up north in the vicinity of Kuwait have been, I believe, from surface-to-surface missiles up there. We've not seen any USV activity out of Iran that we've seen in the Gulf at this point.
Nor have any ships hit mines or anything.
Yeah, there's
like
been
that.
no
It's still flowing through the.
There's been no strikes that we.
One more time, right here.
Thank you so much. Heather Mullins, Lindell TV. My first question is, President Trump is set to meet with Xi Jinping in a couple of weeks. How much support, if any, has China been given the Iranian regime? And then the second question, just, I know President Trump calling for an unconditional surrender from Iran. Given that the U.S. is working in partnership with Israel on this whole operation, is Iran expected to meet demands of both countries or just the U.S., and what are those demands?
Well, we're proud to partner with the incredible capabilities the Israelis have, but our objectives are our objectives, and so when those are met, as we meet those, we'll set the tempo of when those are met. What was the first question?
He's meeting with Xi Jinping.
Oh yeah, the president has
China's
a historic relationship with President Xi. They look forward to having a dynamic conversation. Two powers. President Trump ultimately has established terms of that relationship, which advance the United States of America, and that meeting will continue to ensure we advance that. That's all I've got. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. What are your thoughts on that? I see a lot of people in the chat not too excited about that one. It sounds like the objectives are obviously to denuclearize, if they think they are, to denuclearize Iran, first of all, and then take out their military capability. They just want to make it so that they're not a threat to anyone in the area, especially Israel. That is their objectives, I believe. As far as like regime change and all that, I'm not sure if that was official, but that's something that obviously is happening. And Trump has also recently said that he was considering Khomeini Jr. being taken out as well. He's already injured, apparently. So what I'll do here is I'll go over the the news updates first, and then we can kind of switch over. I have seen some missile alerts. Oh, there's one right there. So there are some missile alerts, but I haven't seen anything actually make it to Israel yet. They got intercepted before they got nearby. So we'll keep monitoring that as well. All right. So let me get into the news first. So this is war updates first, last 24 hours. U.S. and Israeli strikes continue inside Iran as the conflict enters its second week with expanding targets across military infrastructure. There were some large explosions in Qud, that's QUD, yesterday. Iran continues missile and drone operations across the region, including attacks or attempted attacks on Gulf shipping routes and regional targets. We know that Saudi Arabia had an attack yesterday as well, and we know that there are attacks happening in Iraq that are also coming from Turkey. So we'll get more into that too a little bit when we do our clips. Shipping disruptions on the Strait of Hormuz persist, raising fears of a global oil supply shock. Oil prices are hovering around $100 per barrel amid fears of disrupted supply from the Gulf. I believe the barrels are down. They were at like 104 or 105 at one point. Last I looked, they were at like 97, I believe. Energy markets, well, that's also because a lot of countries are releasing their fuel reserves, including Japan. So they're trying to, they're trying to fight that and counterbalance it. Energy markets experiencing extreme volatility due to potential closure of Hormuz. Hormuz is not officially closed. Like some of you guys were saying in chat, there is traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. So if you look here, there was significantly more tankers that were in here, and you can see it's pretty much emptied out for the most part, and there is traffic going in and out. There are attacks that are happening, but there has been traffic moving through there. And governments are considering using strategic oil reserves like we talked about with Japan, but there's other ones that want to join, and they also lifted sanctions on some of Russia's oil that was, I guess, shipped or, pulled out of the ground at a certain point. So up to a certain date, that oil no longer has sanctions on it. And Zelensky is saying that that's going to give like $10 billion back to Russia towards war. So he's not happy about that. And at the same time, we're asking him to assist us with drone warfare. And then we have the, I guess you could call them terror attacks, technically. We had the ROTC shooting at Old Dominion University in Virginia. That was yesterday. Gunmen opened fire inside a ROTC class, killing one instructor and injuring two others. Witnesses reported the attacker shouting, Allahu Akbar. And authorities are investigating possible terrorism motives. And if you hadn't heard, they actually, technically, well, I just heard they stabbed him, right? So the students jumped on him, and I guess multiple students attacked him right after he shot the instructor. But I guess one student reportedly stabbed him like 22 times. So he didn't stand a chance. And, sometimes that's what you have to do in these situations. Typical Israel synagogue attack in Michigan. The attacker was rammed he rammed a truck into the temple. And there were reports of a fire. I don't know if the vehicle was on fire or if the building was on fire. But one security guard was injured. He got hit by the vehicle. And dozens of responders treated the smoke inhalation after the vehicle ignited. So I guess it was a vehicle officially. Investigators described the event as a targeted act of violence against the Jewish community. Initial reports, I have not seen any follow-ups on this yet, but he was taken out by a security guard. So one security guard got hit by the car, and a different security guard shot him and ended him. They also said he had a rifle in the vehicle, as well as supposedly he had some explosives as well. And there have been additional attacks. These have been in like Oslo, Norway, and other countries, as well as around the U.S., that have been targeted towards the Jewish community. And it seems like synagogues specifically have been a target. And we'd also heard about this California Iran drone report. And this is interesting because apparently what happened was one of the news stations showed an email or got an email from some informant. And this was an official FBI, letter or whatever it was. But they basically took it and ran with it. And the report was unverified. It was not based on official data. And this news report just took it and said, hey, holy crap, Iran's going to attack California with drones. So the FBI circulated a bulletin warning that Iran might attempt drone attacks on the U.S. West Coast launched from an offshore vessel. And remember, we had heard something similar to that. I believe was it last year during the New Jersey drone stuff going on? There was some senator or governor that went on TV and said that there was like an Iranian ship off the coast that could launch drones, and everyone told him he was crazy. And then just recently, supposedly in this war, we took out that ship, right? We took out that that carrier that launches all these drones. Like I said, it was based on unverified tips, and California officials in the White House stated there's no credible or imminent threat, but law enforcement remains on alert. Security experts note that while unlikely, such a strike will likely be symbolic rather than a large scale. So people have been asking, like, can these drones reach the mainland? No, from Iran. They're not going to launch it from Iran and be able to hit the U.S. But what they can do is they can, let me find the right one here. What they can do is they have proxies in Mexico, right? So they can have drones in Mexico and launch them across the border, including the cartels, right? That's one way. And if they did that, then they could hit Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California. I'm not sure why this was specifically only California. But the other possibility is they're saying that maybe there was like a vessel off here on the West Coast, off the shore. And, you know, obviously they could have hit Hawaii as well. And they could hit anything on this coast. Again, why just California? Because you also have Oregon and Washington over here too. So kind of strange. But it looks like that's a report that came out that was unverified that someone just ran with, and it was not an official report. So anyone that was worried about that, I think you can probably take that one off the list for now. And someone asked about Pete Hegseth benching 315 pounds. So I just want to say that the average man who works out but doesn't power lift will struggle drastically with 315 pounds. I can bench 315 pounds once, about similar to how he does it. And because usually when I lift, I don't lift for power. But the average person who's about 6 foot, maybe 200 pounds or something, they're going to probably struggle with 315 unless they lift a lot. So I'll show this. But I don't think it's anything like damning on him, to be honest. And of course, this is part of his campaign to show that he's in there with the military and he's working out and all that kind of stuff. They're really pushing fitness. As you know, a lot of the military is overweight and not passing their physical tests. But this amount of weight, when you pick it up off the bench and you go to bench it, it feels like it's going to crush your bones, right? Like, obviously there's people who can lift significantly more than this. You know, like my brother, for example. I have a brother that's 6'5", 320 pounds. And, you know, he can throw this weight around like it's nothing. But for the average person, that's extremely heavy. So, let's see, we got that, we got that. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some people who are extremely powerful. Like, I think my brother can easily do like 500-ish. I have friends that are power lifters that can do 700-800, right? Like easily, like reps. But again, like the average person, you know, they're not doing, a lot of them can't do 2 plates, let alone 3. So, just trying to see if there's anything actually going on, or if I should go ahead and do clips. I think I might just jump into clips. I see that there are warnings in Israel. There are some missile alerts and stuff, but there's nothing actually incoming right now. We'll hear it if it comes in. We'll hear the alarms go off on the live cams. So I think I'll get started into that. All right. So we have, actually, you know what? Before I do that, let's do this really quick. We were talking about the tankers, right? And people were saying that Iran or some Iranian-related group claimed responsibility for the tankers going down, saying it was a missile or rocket or something like that. It was some kind of you know, like a little proxy group, supposedly. But here's the thing. If you go back and look through this, I was going through the history of these tankers, which you can do on Flight Radar. I'm not sure if you can in the free version. But a lot of times you'll see these tankers are flying right over the top of each other a lot. You know, they're very close to each other constantly. And if you go back and you look through, I'm not sure if they're refueling each other or what that is. But let me pull this back a little bit. I'm trying to find another spot where they're like this. Like right here. They're right on top of each other, right? And there's other times where there's several of them that are all right on top of each other. And you can see how many are going through here. There's a ton of them constantly. I'm trying to find a good spot where there were multiple that were right on top of each other. But the point is that they're very close to each other, and there's a lot of them. Like this over here. See? I mean, they're constantly, I don't know why they do this pattern. I'm not sure if it's a standard procedure, but all these flying through here, these are all tankers. And at any given point, they could be refueling a fighter jet or a cargo ship or something else. And they're often like this, stacked. So what we saw, let me pull it over here. What we saw was like this. So this is how the tail usually looks of one of these stratotankers. And then this is how the one looked that came back. So a missile, if it hit, you would see a lot more destruction. You'd see burning and that kind of stuff. You don't see that. It looks like something sheared this off. Like these two tankers crossed each other's paths, or one slowed down, the other one flew past and took this off. But this piece is off here, which makes a lot of people think that the other tanker hit this one and somehow couldn't recover. So did Iran do it? Was it just a collision? It's looking more like a collision right now. But I want to make sure you guys saw that, because that does seem like it was not a missile, at least not this tanker. The other one could have been hit by a missile possibly, and then, you know, caused it to run into this one. But we're probably never going to know at this point. So let's go ahead and do... Apparently, Starmer's asking for if we need help, and Trump is saying it's too late. So I'm not sure if that means that, you know, Trump's just done with them. Because I'm sure, obviously, we can always need the help, right? The more allies, the better. You know, especially in this kind of situation in war. But he's saying we don't need them. And then Zelensky, again, like he's saying, the sanctions relief on oil for Russia could give them about $10 billion back into the war, which is huge. So that could make them, you know, that could help them rearm. So that could be a major issue. Trump suggests Putin may be helping Iran. If you remember, there were some reports that Putin was saying that they were giving intelligence, same with China, giving intelligence to Iran of where to target and who to target. And Trump is saying, I think he might be helping them a little bit. So I think we're aware of it, but it doesn't seem like they're going to do anything about it. I'm not sure what they would do or could do, to be honest. And Erbil attack was unacceptable. This is according to Macron. So Macron is basically saying that France's position is purely defensive. They're saying they're not attacking anyone, so they should not be attacked, basically. This is leaflets that were dropped in Beirut by the IDF. So they just drop them in bulk like this. They fly everywhere. People can pick them up and read them. But they've been warning specific areas to get out because they're going to hit those areas. And they'll also do like a knock. So they'll do a smaller munition that hits above buildings and definitely get your attention. And then that's your warning. And then shortly after that, then they hit it with they hit it with a bigger bomb or missile. So it's not like they're just, you know, blindly targeting and blowing up everything. They are trying to be humane. They are giving people chances to get out and that kind of stuff. As far as where it dropped, let's see. It doesn't say exactly where, but it says it had QR codes and links to Facebook accounts and WhatsApp for recruitment. Yeah, so I'm not sure. It doesn't say the exact location. And this was an Israeli drone hit a motorcycle. So this would be like another targeted assassination attempt, I believe. And there's no gore or anything to show here, but that's very precise. Think about the ability to hit a motorcycle and another country with a drone. So, I mean, they're getting good at this stuff. And this is more HIMARS and the ATACMS. So these are what's being launched by the U.S. against Iran and probably Lebanon as well. And this guy, he's been very outspoken, but this is him talking about Trump.
Well, I think as we're speaking, Trump could declare total victory and pull everybody out. He's perfectly capable of it, and that's a problem. I wish we had a different president who was doing this. And in fact, I wish we had a president who had had the good sense to prepare the American people by making the case for regime change by an address from the Oval Office to the nation as a whole, not in a speech from Mar-a-Lago at 2:30 in the morning. Well, I think as we're speaking, Trump could.
So he's under the impression that Trump could pull out now and still claim victory. So it's pretty interesting. Donald Trump on Mustafa Khamenei, Ali Khamenei's son. I think he's probably alive. I think he is damaged, but I think he's probably alive in some form, you know. And I think this goes back to people, there were rumors that he was like in a coma and his leg was blown off or something similar. In Tehran, they are still in the streets. They're chanting death to America. They're putting nails into the flag. So it looks like there's still a very large group of them that are very pro-Iran. And as we've heard from others, there are people that are happy that this is happening. We have some facilities that were hit. Let me turn this volume down here. You can see smoke and some explosions in the background, but this was a Revolutionary Guard that was hit in Iran. We have more people celebrating, and they're chanting death to America. Death to America and Israel. So if you want to create some terrorist cells and some future extremists, the way you do that is you bomb their country and kill their leader. So I think we're going to be paying for this in time to come and here in the future. Let me see if we have more alerts coming in. No, that's just a police car. And if you remember, we said that we were going to go after Cuba. I should say Trump said he was going to go after Cuba. Cuba's President Miguel Diaz-Canel. We have recently held talks with representatives of the United States government. These talks have been aimed at finding solutions through dialogue to the bilateral differences that we have between the two nations. These are international factors that have facilitated these exchanges. So he is trying to preemptively not get Maduro'd, basically. More missile alerts. India's negotiating with Iran to let 23 oil and LNG tankers pass through the Strait of Hormuz. The ships have been stuck in the Persian Gulf since the U.S. and Israeli strikes began. That was 13 days ago. And I assume these tankers have food and water and that kind of stuff on board as they do long journeys, but not a good situation. And then during this demonstration, there were some missiles and things that hit in the background, and they're just saying it's embarrassing to the Quds Force headquarters. And interestingly, we've burnt through a year of our stockpile already in 13 days. How long will the U.S. missile stocks last? The war with Iran is already draining them for years ahead. According to Financial Times, the U.S. is rapidly consuming its stockpiles of Tomahawk cruise missiles and other precision munitions. Estimates by the CSIS think tank suggested about 168 Tomahawks were launched in just the first 100 hours of the war. And it's saying that the U.S. can't keep up pace. We're not in a wartime economy, so we can't manufacture as fast as we're using it. So that's always a problem. The first 6 days of the war cost the U.S. roughly $11.3 billion. And the Pentagon is preparing a $50 billion request to Congress to replenish its stocks. So I don't know how expensive other wars were, but that sounds insane to me. And senior military officials have said over 10,000 have died in the Iranian eliminations. So That I don't know if that's the official count for everyone that's been injured and that kind of stuff and died from it, but 10,000 so far. And they say 11 on the U.S. side, including the tanker. A senior military official says the U.S. initially doubted Israel could carry out a successful decapitation strike. According to the official, Israeli forces have destroyed between 160 and 190 missile launchers, disabling about 200 more, and roughly 150 remain. So they've taken out about 2/3 of their capacity for Iran. I would assume that's the above ground launchers. Obviously, they have the missile cities underground, so I'm not sure how that plays into all of this. We also have strikes near the Kandahar airport in Afghanistan. This is from Pakistan. So Pakistan is hitting fuel depots, and they claim that the sites support military logistics, while the Taliban condemned the strikes as a violation of Afghan sovereignty and vowed retaliation. So Pakistan is getting involved at this point, and they are striking in Afghanistan. There also been continuous explosions in Iran, basically 24/7. They're getting hit. A lot of scenes look like this. There are some much bigger explosions, like these bunker buster type explosions that have been happening as well. And we have people saying that the Arab nations need to come together, the Gulf Arab nations specifically, and work together as partners in all this. They seem to be very independent at this point, which is not good in the long run. But this is checkpoints that are being hit across Iran. So these checkpoints where they check for spies and munitions and illegals and that kind of stuff, they're being attacked by the U.S. and Israel, but I believe mostly Israel. But I think they've hit like 12 across the country so far. So my question would be, are these military checkpoints? Or are these just like civil? I don't know if these are civilian targets or if these are military targets at this point. And a lot of people were talking about this yesterday. This is the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is holy, I believe, to Jews and Muslims. And it was struck. Some people said it was on fire and all that kind of stuff. But this is the video that this is the only video I could find. It shows, you can see this smoke coming up from over here, like a missile landed next to it or something, or a rocket. So it doesn't look like a direct hit, but it looks like something caught on fire next to it. I'll see if I can find something bigger, like an actual like flame or something going on, but so far I haven't been able to find anything. There have been some more synagogues overnight where fires broke out. So again, there's more anti-Semitic attacks at synagogues. No injuries were reported, and investigations are reviewing unverified footage suggesting a possible explosion. That's from Times of Israel. Trump on the Michigan incident. This was the Temple Mount, or the, Temple Israel in Michigan. He says, sending our love to the Jewish community. And there will be naval escorts, but they said it's not happening right now, likely by the end of the month. And that was in response to, obviously, some of the attacks that have happened, but also the fact that they said there were going to be mines placed out there. I've since heard that the mining ships have been hit. So as of right now, it doesn't seem like mines are going to be part of the play. And then we have this. I showed the blurred out version of this yesterday, and they flagged the video. So I'm not going to show it. So I'll just talk about it. They're suspecting that attack from yesterday that happened in RG. They're saying that, a terror attack. So we're seeing this kind of universal, global thing that's happening where it seems as though these Islamist or like Muslim groups are starting to mobilize. It looks like ISIS might be part of it, but this is probably in response to the war and Khomeini getting taken out. So as always, stay vigilant. Make sure you guys are watching your back. Make sure you're being situationally aware. So don't go to large crowds and just hang out blindly and that kind of stuff. And don't be looking at your phone, looking at the ground. And the Old Dominion shooter was identified as Mohammed Jallo, 36. He was a former U.S. National Guardsman, but he has ties to, I believe, Sierra Leone and also ISIS. So this is kind of more pushing towards that like Muslim Islamic attacks. And real quick, if you guys can, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe and share this around. And if you would like to stay up to date on these kind of like war updates and the news and things like that, and also 24/7 monitoring, I'm going to be doing this specifically over at my other channel, which is brand new. I just put it together. It's called Off Script Radio. I put it in the chat. So if you guys want to go there and subscribe, in the next week or so, I will be moving these specific war updates and news over there. And I will be keeping Trigger Smart for like the investigatory pieces and obviously firearms. All right. That is the clips. That's the updates. And I will continue looking. Now, did we want to, let's do a quick, let's end this poll first here about the reporters. Do we want to watch Live Now or Al Jazeera? I know a lot of people say Al Jazeera, but lately they've been covering non-war stuff. So I'm just going to verify too that they're actually covering any war things right now. But if you want to vote on that really quick. All right, so it looks like 90% is saying Al Jazeera. Now, knowing that, do you, as far as any follow-ups on like terror attacks in the synagogues and all that, I don't think we're going to get that on Al Jazeera. I think that's only going to be on Fox. So if you would like to continue seeing more stuff about the attacks that have been happening in the U.S. and everything, should probably watch Fox. So if you take that into account, would that change your vote? Yeah, someone says both propaganda, just different flavors. I don't disagree. Yeah, so a lot of people are saying let's start with Fox just because of the local attacks. And then if there's nothing really going on with that, then we'll switch over to Al Jazeera. We can always go back and forth. And that sound right there, that's the radio.
10 times the number of hate crimes than any other community in this country. So it is an epidemic. And until we push back on that permission, we're going to see incidents like this continue to proliferate. The Jewish community spends over $1 billion across the country securing their houses of worship, their schools, their institutions. No community in America should be fearful of having their own kind congregate for things like education and worship. So I stand here proud of the community, but angry that we even are put in this position. Thankful to law enforcement, but asking the average citizen out there, if you have a friend, a colleague, coworkers who are using anti-Semitism in their daily life and feel like it's just normal, please call that out wherever you see it. Thank you.
May I say a few words?
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Jonathan Warshay. I'm the Township Supervisor here in West Bloomfield. For those of you unfamiliar with township government in Michigan, my position's like the mayor of a city, elected by the voters, but I'll stop the civics lesson. I think it's fair to say that none of us went to bed Wednesday expecting to wake up Thursday's events. But thanks to the preparation and training of Temple Israel's security team and the West Bloomfield Police Department, the unexpected did not turn into tragedy. Yesterday's incident at Temple Israel is deeply concerning for everyone in West Bloomfield, Michigan, across the country, as well as Jews everywhere. I live in West Bloomfield, and my wife and I are members of Temple Israel, so I have a keen understanding of the effects on the community. We are thankful for the courage and professionalism of our first responders and our partner agencies who moved to protect lives and work toward stabilizing the scene. Our thoughts are with all members of Temple Israel and their families. No community should ever feel unsafe gathering in a house of worship or sending their children to school. I want to thank all the officials, colleagues, and members of the public who have reached out to me in solidarity. I would also like to thank the Shenandoah Country Club for hosting the Operations Center and being the site where the preschoolers and parents were reunited. Shenandoah is a wonderful community partner, and I thank them from the bottom of my heart. We'll continue to work closely with law enforcement and community leaders as more information comes available. Thank you, and may God bless us all.
Happy to open it up for a few questions. Yes.
Good morning, Shante Passmore, Local 4. Is there any indication that the suspect may have expressed his intent or motives, either whether online or to a loved one, what he had planned to do yesterday?
I appreciate the importance of your question. I am not the appropriate person to answer that. We'll have to defer to the FBI as there's an ongoing investigation. Yeah, Charlie.
Governor, do you think this happened because of the conflict in Iran?
I'm not putting my theories into the press is not going to help an investigation, so I'm going to refrain from that. I do know that we have seen a rise in anti-Semitism. We have seen it over many years, predating the conflict, but certainly it is at a historic high, and I worry that that will continue. And so it's why I am calling on anyone with a platform to be very responsible with their rhetoric, not to identify or target the Jewish community. That is anti-Semitism writ large, and I don't think that any of us should permit or allow that to stand. And that's why I'm asking people to turn down the rhetoric.
Governor, on that note, Josh Landon, Fox 2 Detroit, we have a very diverse community, Jewish, Arab, and so on and so on. When it comes to lowering the temperature, because we talk to each other, we work together, we build families amongst each other, what's the message you can deliver to help lower the temperature?
Disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz are forcing shipping companies to rethink how goods and energy move around the world. Now, that's where other shipping routes may come in. Instead of moving through the Gulf and onto the Mediterranean via the Suez Canal, some vessels are taking the much longer journey around the southern tip of Africa, the Cape of Good Hope. But the longer route increases travel by 3,000 to 5,000 nautical miles. That's 10 to 14 extra days of travel. And that means higher fuel costs. In total, this detour adds about $1 million in extra costs per trip. Now, while port authorities here at the Cape Town port say they're ready to handle the additional traffic, ships that may take the Cape route are not stopping at these ports. It would take up too much time and cost more. The rerouting might offer some benefits to African ports, but that will be far short of the extra costs for shipping companies and their clients. Famida Miller, Al Jazeera, Cape Town.
Joining us from London is James Medway. He's the co-director of Verdant, an economic policy think tank and former UK Treasury official. Many thanks for joining the programme. So we are now roughly 2 weeks into this war. We've seen Iranian attacks on shipping and energy infrastructure in the Gulf appear to be escalating. The Strait of Hormuz is effectively closed. And we have heard from Iran's new supreme leader, who's vowed to keep it that way. Oil prices have already climbed back above $100 a barrel. So given everything we are seeing and where we are right now, how concerned are you about the direction of oil prices?
Well, this is, I mean, the International Energy Agency has already described this as the worst disruption to global oil markets since a global oil market has existed. That's many, many decades that oil has been an internationally traded commodity. This is the worst that we've ever seen. So you'd anticipate, particularly if the war continues, and I don't claim to be a military expert, but it certainly looks like that is going to be the case, you'd anticipate that whatever $100 or more a barrel now, you'd see this going up into the distance from this point onwards, with all the inflationary impacts because of that. You're already seeing the impact at petrol stations around the world. You can see straight away it costs more just to fill up your car and drive about the place. But it was what happens next in the transport of food, the transport of manufactured goods. We've just heard of the reroutings around the Cape of Good Hope, the additional costs for moving anything anywhere. And then, of course, it's also not just oil and gas coming through the Strait of Hormuz. It's a third of the world's fertilizer. So that feeds into how much farmers have to pay to grow crops. And that, of course, starts starts to turn into food price rises somewhere down the line.
Right, so huge impacts potentially on food prices, inflation more generally. You've argued this conflict with Iran could actually become a turning point for globalization. Could you explain to our viewers what you mean by that?
Well, you could start with the disruption that's happened to this global market of oil. That what you have had for decades is, in principle, you can be someone who wants oil, you can be a refiner, you can be someone selling petrol, you can use it for plastic processes, and you can obtain that oil from somewhere else in the world, and there's a standard uniform price that everyone pays, and that oil will turn up, and that's a big globalized market. Disruptions of this type, something that's so big and so massive that the price gets to the point where no one can afford that, starts to lead to that market breaking down. You start to see things like, for instance, so you see in China, where China has said we're not going to be exporting certain kinds of fuels to the rest of the world. You get countries that start to say we have a strategic reserve of petroleum. So China, Japan, Korea, the US has a large reserve. They start to use that instead of going to the global market. This is the way in which globalization, this big idea that you would have a global economy that can supply pretty much anything anybody wants to buy anywhere in the world, starts to fall away, and you get something that's much more regionalized, much more under government control, and different to what we've lived under for the last several decades now.
And you are in Britain, obviously, and you've suggested that Britain is particularly exposed to these risks because of its economy and how it's been built over the decades around this sort of highly globalized system. Why is the UK more vulnerable than others, and are there other countries in a similar position?
We're talking here really about developed countries, so the richer group of nations, and the UK really sticks out because it is a place that really went for globalization. It became a very heavily dependent on imports from the rest of the world because it was plugged into a big global market. You think about what the City of London does, you know, lots of trading and finance and this sort of thing. It's all part of that globalized system, and that pays for us, in effect, to keep on buying stuff from the rest of the world. If that system breaks down, if there are huge shocks everywhere else, suddenly your economy, in this case the UK's, that is dependent on imports of oil and gas. We import about 50% of the natural gas that we use, and crucially, I would say, food, of which about 40% or more of the food we eat is imported, and 100% of the ammonia we need for fertilizer to grow the food that we eat here is imported. You're really exposed. So big shocks in prices, big shocks to supply in the rest of the world feed very rapidly into impacts on people's standard of living in the UK. For other parts of the world, of course, for the developing world, for poorer countries where the cost of food is a much more important part of people's budgets, the shocks could be even worse, I would say, at this point.
And a lot of this is obviously linked to the fact that you have a huge share of global trade moving through some of these narrow maritime routes like the Strait of Hormuz, which we've been talking about. Why has the global economy framed itself this way, exposed itself this way, become so dependent on just a handful of these strategic choke points?
Well, this wasn't meant to happen, put it that way. It was meant to be that once you have a global market and you could, as I said, get a barrel of oil or however much you want anywhere in the world from the places where the oil is produced, that all works fine for as long as you can guarantee the security and safety of the transport that takes place all across the world. And what we've seen over the last few years is clearly that's broken down. The Strait of Hormuz is now, to all intents and purposes, closed to most shipping. We've seen more recently the Strait of Bab el-Mandab on the other side of the Arabian Peninsula closed again for geopolitical reasons, and climate change has played a part too. The Panama Canal was restricted for the last few years because of a drought in Central America, so that restricts how you can move things around the world. The basic problem is that the stuff that we want to consume everywhere can only come from certain places. Some places have oil and gas, other places do not. Everybody needs oil and gas, so you end up with choke points that appear around the places where you get oil and gas and fertilizer and some other things from, and that is a real vulnerability that's now built into the system.
So interesting to talk to you, James Medway, co-director of Verdant, an economic policy think tank and former UK Treasury official. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, as we've been saying, many ships have been stuck on either side of the Strait of Hormuz because of the war in the Middle East. It's also upended the lives of thousands of Filipino sailors who form the backbone of the commercial shipping industry. Jamila Alingdogan reports from Manila.
Around 1 in every 4 seafarers in the world is from the Philippines. They work on ships that carry oil, food, and goods across the world. including through critical choke points like the Strait of Hormuz, where the Iran war is disrupting transit. It often takes 4 to 5 years of study at a maritime academy. Training centers like Mariana Academy in Manila has prepared thousands of sailors for international shipping lines. For many of them, it will lead to some of the world's most dangerous sea lanes. Rodolfo Dayandante has been working on shipping vessels for nearly 20 years. He says there is a reason Filipino maritime workers are sought after.
Being a consultant-oriented, you give us some.
Zelensky stated that Ukraine can help stabilize the situation in the Middle East. He noted that 10 countries have already reached out to Ukraine for support in defending against Iranian Shahed-style drones. According to him, Ukraine has the world's largest experience in combating these drones and is ready to share it. Additionally, Zelensky emphasized that the easing of U.S. sanctions on Russian oil would give the Kremlin an additional $10 billion, which would go towards funding the war. He also added that the drones Russia uses against Ukraine are being deployed against Middle East countries, as well as against U.S. and European forces in the region.
Workforce. The Philippines is thousands of kilometers from the Middle East, and it may not control the oil that passes through these waters, but its sailors are right in the middle of an escalating conflict. Jamela Alindogan, Al Jazeera, Manila.
Well, the U.S. and Israeli attacks on Iran has had effects far beyond the conflict itself and economic repercussions. Satellite-based navigation here in the Gulf has become unreliable for many people, both on the ground and in the air, because of military jamming and spoofing of GPS signals. Colin Baker explains how it all works.
Position, direction, time. 3 data points that tell the pilot of a plane or the captain of a ship where they are. And right now, here in this region, this data is being disrupted like never before. Look at these maps. One shows ship navigation interference across the entire Arabian Gulf. Another shows the same for aircraft. There's interference everywhere. Pilots, captains, and even our phones read their location from satellites. This is GPS, the Global Positioning System, or one of its equivalents. Now, that satellite sends a signal at 100 watts from 20,000 kilometers away. That's about the same as looking at a light bulb from 20,000 kilometers. By the time it reaches the ground, it's a tiny fraction of its original strength. A strong broadcast on the same frequency overwhelms it. So interfering with GPS is not only doable, it's becoming a lot more common than you think.
Earlier, we were talking about the leaflets being dropped. So apparently they were directly over Beirut. So there's some video here. I know someone was joking that maybe it was out over like open desert or something, but it looks like it's right in the city streets. So not only are they blowing everything up, but they're also littering. I'm just kidding. All right.
Of vessels affected is now unprecedented. Now, it's not only jamming. Spoofing is another form of interference, broadcasting deliberately false GPS data. Some defense systems and some weapons use spoofing to deceive adversaries, but civilian planes pick it up too. And it's so common, there's now a standard practice to manage it. Commercial pilots flying near Ukraine and Western Russia, for instance, turn off their satellite navigation systems on every flight. And they're starting to do so here as well. If they don't, false signals shift their maps, change their clocks, or even tell them to make a sharp turn suddenly. These navigation systems were built to make aviation and shipping safer. If they stop working, what else is there? Well, a compass and a gyroscope to find position, direction, and time, and a radio to communicate it. Experts say the next generation of captains may have to look to the past to get around in the future.
Okay, let's take a look at some of the other global stories making headlines. Cuba's President Miguel Diaz-Canel says officials have held talks with the U.S. government over Washington's oil blockade. The island nation relies heavily on energy imports, particularly from Venezuela and Mexico. The Trump administration has cut off shipments from Venezuelan oil and threatened tariffs on any country that sells oil to Havana. No fuel shipments have reached Cuba in 3 months, deepening an already severe economic crisis there. Ukraine has struck one of the largest crude oil hubs in Russia. A large fire broke out at an oil depot located in the south of the country. Russian officials say the fire has now been extinguished. The hub is a...
I want to watch this here really quick and see if there's any actual information we haven't gotten already. This is about the stratotanker.
CENTCOM has now just confirmed that 4 crew members were killed when a U.S. military refueling aircraft crashed in Iraq. Rescue efforts, we're told, are ongoing to try to locate the other 2 crew members. The cause of Bertrand has new and important panel. Iran has stepped 11 not due to hostile fire or friendly. With Iran, a conflict now entering day 14, and all eyes remain on the Strait of Hormuz, that critical shipping channel. Iran has stepped up attacks there on commercial ships. New this morning.
And you can see the traffic, so there's definitely movement.
As I was just speaking about with the congressman, President Trump is telling Fox News that the U.S. military would escort ships through the strait if needed, but, quote, we're going to see what happens. And he also said that the U.S. is going to be hitting Iran, quote, very hard over the next week. CNN's Natasha Bertrand has new and important reporting live from Washington for us this morning. Natasha, what are you expecting to hear from this briefing, or what questions they're likely to get this morning?
Well, they're likely to get a lot of questions, of course, about this incident that occurred yesterday where a KC-135 fueling tanker crashed after colliding, it appears, with another tanker, which ultimately landed safely in Israel. But there are a lot of questions surrounding CENTCOM's statement, in which they said that this was not due to hostile fire or friendly fire, because an Iranian proxy group based in Iraq has now come out and taken responsibility for downing that aircraft. Of course, they did not provide evidence, but these proxy groups, they do have surface-to-air missiles, and so it's possible, for example, that what happened was these tankers were trying to evade a missile, or perhaps this was just an incident of a mid-air collision of these tankers just flying too closely together. I mean, there's so many possibilities here, but the bottom line is that 4 U.S. service members are now confirmed to be dead. 2 others, apparently the search is ongoing for them. Unclear what their whereabouts and their condition is as of this moment.
I also want to address the tragic loss of our KC-135 refueling aircraft yesterday. The incident occurred over friendly territory in western Iraq while the crew was on a combat mission, and again was not the result, as CENTCOM has said, was not the result of hostile or friendly fire. We're still treating this as an active rescue and recovery operation. As CENTCOM announced this morning, 4 airmen.
Central Command just confirmed the death of 4 service members in the war.
Okay, so it looks like they're just recycling the same information. But, yeah, so originally I heard 6. So apparently there were 6 on board, but they've only recovered 4 bodies. So I would assume the other 2 are also deceased, but I guess time will tell. Someone said for me to look up the Club K systems, Club K missile systems, and it looks like they're similar to this. It's basically like a cargo shipping container type of setup, and they can put these on docks and boats and different things, and it just looks like a regular shipping container, but obviously it has missiles inside of it, and it's something that they can transport easily and drop off. And I think these are mock-ups and stuff, but the idea is pretty genius, and I think China also has something very similar. So that's something we have to worry about too. And obviously we do a lot of trade. I don't know how they would sniff these out. I mean, I know there was some number, like we only look at, let me verify that number again. What percentage of containers do we actually inspect coming into America? So it says only approximately 3 to 5% of shipping containers that arrive to the U.S. seaports are physically inspected and scanned by customs. So consider that 3 to 5%, and some of them could be these guys here. Very interesting. Not good.
Saw this exact same pattern happen in Gaza, the same lazy, flattened reporting that we saw.
And I see I'm muted. So this is the tankers, and you can see that we have two on top of each other, two very close to each other, and then two on top of each other again. Now, when I say on top of each other, you know, obviously if I zoom in, there's going to be some kind of distance between them. But could these type of practices, whatever they're doing here, could this be why we had that collision yesterday? And is it going to keep happening? I don't know how many hours these guys fly, but I know some of the like B-2 jets and stuff like that, when they go out, they're looking at 36-hour flights sometimes. I don't know about you, but I would be extremely exhausted if I was flying for 36 hours straight. So lots of straddle tankers going, lots of refueling happening. Still a lot of transport. I do not see the drone off the coast of Cyprus, but usually when I look at this, it's later in the afternoon, so I wonder if they'll be back again later this afternoon. So that's interesting. And before, we were seeing a lot more flights going around Cyprus and kind of monitoring over here. So I wonder if that activity has slowed down as far as the Lebanon issues. Let's look and see what we have for our Poseidons. So we have one Poseidon over here. These are planes that look for nuclear radiation, usually over the ocean, but this one is circling around just outside Abu Dhabi. So it's looking over land. I don't know if it was circling over here too. It looks like it might have been circling off of the coast a little bit. But that is the only one I see in the Middle East. And US only has two that I see right now. One is just flying out, nothing yet there. And we have this one looking like it's starting to circle. Searching out over here. Obviously Mar-a-Lago's out there. They have to protect Trump. So very interesting. They had some down here further down the Florida coast, and one was on the southern tip by the Key West as well yesterday. We had several off the East Coast and the West Coast, so obviously their transponders are off or they're not up yet. So we'll go back to all. Strait of Hormuz, as we saw, is having some movement. Pizza Index, a lot of these places are closed, so we're not going to see much activity here yet. I did notice, this is, I have to dig more into this, but I did notice there's more red on the radiation map. And typically in the US, you might have one or two at a time that are red, maybe three. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and one up in Canada. And some of these numbers are decently high. This one's 11,000. One's 3,000, 1,500. So I need to look deeper into those and see how often that's expected. I don't know if it's a reason for alarm or not. I think it probably happens somewhat regularly. And then you have 8,000 up in Canada. And still the one over here in the UAE as well. That just popped up a couple days ago. This is showing our fires from NASA's fire radar satellite, and each red spot represents a single one. So I don't, you can see more just popped up. So these are probably attacks and stuff that are happening. these are hits maybe in Israel, or they could be wildfires. I think that's what this was originally designed for. Looks like we don't have any active launches. We have 742 aircraft and 22 satellites. I think the 742 aircrafts is the most I've seen, and maybe that could be part of why that collision happened yesterday too. Maybe there's just too much activity in that area. Earthquakes, we had one in Turkey. I did hear, yeah, this one in Chile, 6.3 in Chile. And as you know, it's exponential, so 6.3 is pretty powerful. Anything over 2.5 shows in here. But again, none in the Middle East as far as Iran and these guys are concerned. Some people were thinking that if we saw some earthquakes over here, which we did see some early on in the war, that it could possibly be them testing something, right? No proof of that. But a lot of people think that, especially if you have one of these that happens and it doesn't have aftershocks. That's when you start to be like, it's kind of sketchy. Kind of sketchy. Oil prices, as you can see, before the war started, we were like, well, let's see, what's this? This is just today. Let's look at the last month, I guess. Okay. So as the war was starting and ramping up, we got up to, what's the highest we've been? 96? 94? That can't be right. That seems low. I heard we were at 100 and something at some point. But as you can see, it seems to be going down. And that's probably because they opened up reserves in several different countries. And they took sanctions off of Russia. So it's a manipulated fall, not a natural one. I don't see any alerts or anything going on in Israel. It is daytime there, so typically it seems like there's less activity during the daytime hours, although there have been some attacks that have happened during the daytime. Lots of refuelers going on. A lot of these Pegasus and Stratotankers, which after yesterday's collision makes me pretty paranoid to see so many in such a small area and see how they're doing these looping patterns as well. That's also that one too. And if you see, do these overlap? No, they don't overlap. But they get fairly close to each other and fly over the top of each other. So we'll see. I hope it's not a pattern. Hopefully they figured out exactly what happened and could prevent it from happening in the future. Is that gunshots? Sounds like gunshots. Looks like the Beirut cam. They're trying to pan over to where they're hearing gunshots coming from. I feel like I'm in Chicago again. No, I'm just kidding. So now remember that Hegseth and Trump have both said that today is going to be significantly ramped up. It's going to be the biggest attack day of the war. So what does that mean? They've already launched, what they say, 1,600 cruise missiles. They've already hit 15 or 16,000 different sites. So how much more can they ramp it up? What are we talking about here? Are we talking about more bunker busting? I'm really interested to see what happens today because that's a big claim considering everything that's happened already. "57 Blondie Locks. You're 100 miles from Beirut?" Are you talking about something else? I might have missed it in chat.
And in several other countries. But this year, the situation is totally different. Over the past 2 weeks, Iran has been hit by a sustained campaign of airstrikes carried out by Israel and the United States. On the very first day of those attacks, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed alongside several senior military commanders, an event that dramatically raised the stakes. Since then, waves of strikes have left a trail of damage and destruction, even in many civilian areas. Red Crescent says 20,000 residential units have been partially damaged or fully destroyed, and the human toll continues to mount as war goes on. The escalation comes after another round of war Israel started 9 months ago back in June, followed by a period of increasingly heated rhetoric between Tehran and Tel Aviv. All of that is now fitting into the atmosphere here today. Emotions are clearly high as we speak to people.
Oppression always comes to an end. Injustice will disappear. God willing, we'll stay here until Israel is destroyed. We stand behind our leader. We've come to pledge allegiance to him.
And the demonstration happens as the airstrikes go on.
We are the nation of Imam Hussein, and we are here to show this. They think that by killing us we will be afraid, that by dropping bombs on our heads we will be afraid. No, we stand by our country.
The proud people of Iran have shown the oppressive and arrogant powers of the world that the wall of oppression can be broken. Today, with their presence in different squares, the people showed that it is possible to overcome injustice and break the wall of oppression.
For many in this crowd, this event is no longer just about expression of support for Palestinians, but also a show of defiance and resilience here at home. Toida Sadi, Al Jazeera, Tehran.
And a new...
So that was him reporting in Iran, saying that they were happy to be out of the oppressive regime that was controlling them before. I don't think they're out of the woods yet, but it seems like they have a lot of people. It's like 50-50 there. You have half of them that are, doing death to America and death to Israel chants in the street with thousands of people, tens of thousands of people. And then you have people like this that are saying that they support the regime being taken out and like a free Iran, and they're pro-Palestinian and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of interesting. I guess it's not much different than the U.S., right? You have your politics, your right and your left, and that kind of stuff.
I was leaving my uncle's house in a vehicle when the missile hit this house and the one below. I felt the roof of the vehicle cave in on me.
I was at home. The whole house collapsed. Everything was destroyed.
Zarazir is one of many Palestinian-Israeli communities not protected by Israel's Iron Dome defense system, leaving them vulnerable to strikes. Interceptions occur frequently over these villages and towns where many Palestinian homes don't have adequate bomb shelters.
This is a disgrace. You cannot provide protection. How many people do you think you can fit in here? This is not a solution that can provide safety.
Hezbollah is also attacking Israel. The military said on Thursday that the group had fired around 200 rockets at Israel the night before, describing it as one of the biggest barrages since cross-border hostilities resumed earlier this month.
There was a boom, the whole house shook, glass shattered, an apocalyptic atmosphere. The main thing is everyone's okay.
2 weeks into the war between the US, Israel and Iran, with mixed messages from the leaders waging it, civilians caught in the crossfire are bracing for what lies ahead. Julie Dager, Al Jazeera.
Noor Odeh is live for us in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. So as we heard in that reporting, Noor, Iranian attacks continuing to hit and target Israel. How is this going down with the Israeli people?
Well, there is a lot of frustration, especially in the northern communities, which are, as we saw in the report there, extremely vulnerable. They are less protected, and they've paid the price time and again for Israel's war. In 2025, 5 people died in Tamra, which is very close to that town that was hit overnight, because of the lack of protection and shelters and so on. In the Negev, where a lot of the missiles are targeted because there are a lot of military bases. There are several unrecognized Bedouin communities that do not have any shelter or protection, that aren't even covered by the Iron Dome or Israel's multi-layered system of air defense. Now, the Israeli government is extending the state of emergency. There will be no in-person instruction in schools in Israel next week. There is talk and some calls for the evacuation of communities, especially in the border area in the north, but no decision has been taken there. And in the meantime, Israel says it attacked 200 targets in Iran, but that this will continue for some time, at least for weeks to come, because the job, as Israel has defined it, is not finished. And on Lebanon, we heard from the Minister of Defense, who said that the Lebanese government will suffer the consequences for Hezbollah's actions by losing territory, which means that Israel wants to occupy more land, and also by Israel targeting civilian infrastructure, as we saw earlier with that targeting of a bridge in the Litani River.
Thank you so much for that, Noor Odeidah, for us in Ramallah. Well, as Noor was saying there, Israel has been launching more attacks in Lebanon. There's been a large explosion in the Al-Fawa area of the southern city of Sidon. Lebanon's health ministry says 8 people were killed, another 9 were wounded. Israel's also launched attacks on the capital Beirut, including residential neighborhoods. One strike hit a building in the densely populated district of Burj Hamoud. More than 822,000 people have now been forced out of their homes in Lebanon since Israel and Hezbollah began fighting again this month. The health ministry says over 680 people have been killed. Lebanon's interior minister has said national unity is key to pulling through the crisis.
We've discussed many measures that must be applied to make sure people are safe and secure. We do everything within the law, and we have a lot of intelligence information. And time and again, we rely on the responsibility of the Lebanese people, because our national unity must always be in our minds, and we depend a lot on this. The unity of the people is important to get rid of troubles and to begin any progress.
Let's go to Bernard Smith, who's live in Beirut for us. So, Bernard, as we've been hearing, there are more attacks in the south of Lebanon and also in Beirut, in the capital. What more can you tell us?
Well, Malene, in addition to those attacks that you already mentioned, the Israeli army in the last couple of hours has dropped a huge amount of leaflets over central Beirut. There was a huge sonic boom as the aircraft dropped these leaflets, and essentially they say, obviously in Arabic, you must disarm Hezbollah, Iran's shield, this leaflet says. He says, if you want to be part of real change and contribute to the prosperity and protection of your country, we are here to listen to you. And there is a QR.
So breaking news, it's official that all crew members of the U.S. KC-135 loss in Iraq are confirmed deceased. This says Iraq. When I first heard about this, it said it was over Iran. So that's interesting. Tampa, Florida, all 6 crew members aboard the refueling aircraft that went down in western Iraq are not confirmed deceased. The aircraft was lost while flying over friendly airspace March 12th during Operation Epic Fury. The circumstances are under investigation. It says it was not due to a hostile fire or friendly fire. The identities will be held for 24 hours, so the next of kin can be notified. So it does appear as though they all were lost, which I assume that would be the case. And Trump is saying there could be more than 1,700 Iranian sleeper cells. I assume he means in the U.S. 1,700, that's enough to hit every major city, right? And let's see. They're looking at sending more warships to protect the Strait of Hormuz. As far as I know, there's already 3 aircraft carriers from the U.S. and 2 from other countries. 1 from France and 1 from the UK, I believe. So I'm not sure how much more firepower they need, but if they're going to be doing escorts and that kind of stuff, they're going to need a lot more resources down there. And then they're looking to see if they actually did kill the head of the Iranian army intelligence or not. There's rumors that he is dead. I don't know how much that means. I don't know how much of a role he played in everything. And the UAE state minister says Iran must stop attacking its neighbors to allow diplomacy to take hold. Mediation can only happen when guns go silent. But ultimately, it's up to President Trump to lead us that way. So it should be interesting to see. And it looks like Hezbollah is going all out on Israel. So even though the war technically is with Iran, it seems like there's possibly more activity happening from Lebanon towards Israel than there is from Iran to Israel. And part of that could be because they took out a lot of their launchers. They think they're down by 80% in their ability to launch at this point. It looks like France and Italy are in talks with Iran for ensuring safe crossing from the Strait of Hormuz. So they're trying to work out some kind of deal, or some kind of maybe just allowing French and Italian tankers through. I'm not sure what they're going to be talking about for that. And it looks like there's more air defense systems that are active in the UAE. So at one point, Iran said that they were going to stop attacking the Gulf states and the Gulf countries. And it looks like that's continued. It hasn't really slowed down. So it looks like the Gulf nations are taking more of a hit than Israel is at this point.
From outside sources makes ships appear in unusual locations. Ships in the Gulf have appeared inside Iran or as far away as West Africa. They look like they're spinning in little circles on land. Even personal devices here in Qatar have been confused. It's dangerous, disorienting, and from an insurance or legal perspective, it means shipping logs might include stops in sanctioned countries. And it's increasing. The insurance firm Lloyd's of London says nearly 4,000 jamming events affected nearly 3,000 ships here in the past week. Windward AI, a monitoring platform, says the prevalence and number of vessels affected is now unprecedented. Now, it's not only jamming. Spoofing is another form of interference, broadcasting deliberately false GPS data. Some defense systems and some weapons use spoofing to deceive adversaries, but civilian planes pick it up too. And it's so common, there's now a standard practice to manage it. Commercial pilots flying near Ukraine and Western Russia, for instance, turn off their satellite navigation systems on every flight. And they're starting to do so here as well. If they don't, false signals shift their maps, change their clocks, or even tell them to make a sharp turn suddenly. These navigation systems were built to make aviation and shipping safer. If they stop working, what else is there? Well, a compass and a gyroscope to find position, direction, and time, and a radio to communicate it. Experts say the next generation of captains may have to look to the past to get around in the future.
Okay, let's get the view on how this is all playing out across other parts of the GCC. Dmitry Medvedenko is here for us live in Doha. So attacks continue, Dmitry, across the region, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, Iraq, Oman, including some people having now lost their lives. Talk us through the latest updates.
That is correct, and that is in Oman. There's two expatriates that were killed in Oman as a result of an attack on the Suha province. These are basically the first fatalities in this conflict for the country. The U.S. Embassy has also issued a warning to its citizens not to leave anywhere further than 50 kilometers away from the embassy in Muscat. And also in Dubai, just minutes ago, we've had a warning that they're dealing with, the authorities are dealing with a ballistic missile threat. There were images circulated across social media of clouds of smoke as a result of a drone attack. The authorities there saying that some minor damage was done to the city and that it was a successful interception. However, they don't specify the location, although the videos that we've seen and some witness accounts suggest that it's right next to the DIFC, the Dubai International Financial Center. There's some context here because around 2 days ago, Iran said that it has free rein now to target US and Israeli-linked financial and economic institutions after one of its banks got attacked by the US and Israel. And we've also been reporting in the past 24 hours that many banks, including HSBC, Standard Chartered, and Citibank, as well as PricewaterhouseCoopers and Deloitte, these companies have all closed their offices in the Middle East for the rest of the week, just for safety precautions to ensure the safety of their employees and their clients. And in Saudi Arabia, several drones were downed in the east, which were reportedly targeting the Shaiba oil field. This has been going on for several days. Here in Qatar, we haven't had our phones blasting for more than 24 hours now, although authorities did explain that they only send out these alarms when additional precautionary measures are advised to citizens and residents. And Qatar Airways at the same time has reported that it has reconfigured some of its planes from passenger to deliver cargo, essential goods, things like medicines and baby formula in the past couple of days coming into Doha to ensure there is no shortage of that. Also, the national flag carrier has said that most of the 8,000 passengers that were stranded in Doha airport have now been successfully repatriated. So countries are indeed trying to adapt to this situation because there's no sign of abating of these attacks coming from Iran for the foreseeable future for now.
Okay, Dmitry, thank you for that. Dmitry Medvedenko updating us there in Doha. Now, I just want to bring you some news that's just coming into us now. I can confirm that all 6 U.S. service members are dead. This is after that incident overnight that saw a U.S. military refueling aircraft involved in the war with Iran that crashed in western Iraq. So just confirming that we are now hearing that all 6 U.S. service members have lost their lives. Okay, let's speak to Abbas Aslani, who joins us from Tehran. He's a senior research fellow at the Center for Middle East Strategic Studies. Good to see you again. So we've been reporting just a short time ago, the U.S. Secretary of Defense speaking to the media, dismissing Iran's supreme leader, calling him weak, saying the country's leadership is in disarray after the deaths of many senior figures. When Iranian leaders hear that kind of messaging from Washington, do they interpret it as a sign of U.S. confidence, or do they see it as political messaging aimed mainly for a domestic American audience?
So what I'm going to do here is I'm also going to be going live here. I think it's either in one or 2 hours with the Tyler Robinson court. It's the pretrial. They're trying to rule on if he can have cameras and that kind of stuff again. But I'm going to be doing that live here shortly. So I need to stop this stream. But that's also why you should go subscribe over to Off Script Radio, because I will be having a 24/7 monitoring stream like this that has all the different live cams, the intel, the radio coming in from military and all that kind of stuff will all be in that stream 24/7 starting in about 5 or 6 days. So I'll be able to do both. I'll be able to do like the Tyler Robinson, Charlie Kirk stuff, the shooting, everything else I do on my channel. And then on that channel, that'll have the news and the 24/7 monitoring. But I'm going to jump off so I can start getting prepared for the next stream. But I appreciate you all being here. Make sure you guys hit that like on the way out. And as always, can't do without you. So I appreciate your support. And I'll see you on the next one.